What's going on, everyone? We are back with more Empire at War modding tutorials here. What we're going to be doing today is learning how to put a hangar onto a ship that doesn't currently spawn fighters. So this is going to assume that you've watched the previous video where we put Admiral Ozzel in as a hero. We're sort of using a lot of the same programs, we're using a lot of the same, we're using the same source files, so you have to make sure you have those. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'll put a link in the description, so go watch that first, and then you can come and we'll get started for this. So I think what we're going to do is use the assault frigate, the Alliance assault frigate, because I don't think that had a hangar in the base game. So we're going to go all the way down to space units frigates. That's where they keep all the frigate space units, or cruisers. Space units, frigates, there we go. Then we're going to control F. It's called Alliance Assault Frigate. So there we go. So now that we have the Alliance Assault Frigate open, what we're going to do is we're going to go down and find its behavior. So for this, we're going to add, just somewhere in the line there, spawn underscore squadron. It needs to have this behavior so that when you put the fighters in there, it knows what to do with them. And we're going to take this and we're going to add to the hardpoint list HP Assault Frigate Hangar, not Hangar. This isn't Pokemon. Not that would be a terrible mod. A Pokemon mod for Empire at War. So that's the first step there. We're going to go look at the Victory Star Destroyer coding though. There's the Victory Star Destroyer no fighters version they have. And here's the Victory Destroyer with fighters. Okay, so we're going to want this coding. See how it has spawn squadron here? This is what the coding looks like for fighter complements. So we're going to take that, just copy it, and we're going to head all the way back up into our assault frigate coding. And we're going to just pop that into the code. Doesn't really matter where. And this is the code that tells the game what to spawn and when to spawn it. So starting spawned units tech 0, which the rebels start at tech 0. Their tech 1 is actually tech 0, I mean. But you can actually change these. So if you want it to spawn different things during different tech levels, you can change starting spawn units tech 0 to starting spawn units tech 1. And then it'll just spawn this TIE bomber at tech 1, and it'll start spawning the TIE interceptor at tech 2. Or, yeah, for the rebels it'd be tech 2. For the Empire, tech 1 is actually tech 1. I think it's because of how they did the slicing stuff. It doesn't make a huge amount of sense, but it's just how the game works for it. You can actually change that if you're changing what the faction does. In Thrawn's Revenge, we actually haven't. But anyways, so you can essentially have as many different types of fighters spawning as you want. The spawn squadron delay seconds is how long it waits between the fighters to spawn them. And then you have your reserve spawned units. So when a TIE Interceptor squadron gets killed, it'll spawn another one, and it'll do that up to 3 times. And same with the TIE Bomber, it'll do it once. We're going to go into our squadrons XML, which is right here, and we're going to take Rebel X-Wing Squadron. We're in here so that we can check that we're getting the actual correct unit for it. So for the X-Wing Squadron, it's called Rebel X-Wing Squadron. We're going to give them 1 to spawn, and in reserve we'll put 1 as well. Because Rebel fighters in the base game are a lot more powerful than Imperial ones. Plus you can buy the individual ones. Though we're not super concerned about balance for this. Then for the next thing, for TIE Bomber Squadron, we're going to give them a Y-Wing Squadron. And we'll actually get rid of the reserve for that. So they'll have 1 Rebel X-Wing Squadron and 1 Y-Wing Squadron when it starts, and then if they lose that X-Wing Squadron, they get another one, and that's it. So that's basically all we need to do to the coding for the actual unit. But we need to put in the hardpoint for HP Assault Frigate Hangar. Because that is referencing a different file. We're going to go into the file that's called hardpoints.xml. And if you're modding a mod that has already has a bunch of different files. If you go into hardpoint data files, it'll list all the different types of files that have hardpoints in them. So you should be more easily able to find them. I know Thrawn's Revenge has like 4 or 5 files for that. So it can be helpful to see where that stuff is. But we're going to go into hardpoints. And we're going to look for a hangar. There. Okay, yeah, they just keep calling it fighter bays and spawn. So we'll just take the hardpoint for the Star Destroyer fighter bay. And we'll go to the Alliance Assault Frigate. So these are what all the weapons look like. We'll talk a bit more about that next time when I'm going to go over how to do a whole unit. But we called it Assault Frigate Hangar. So we're going to get rid of the name there. HP Assault Frigate Hangar. So when you're modding XML stuff for EAW, you're going to be doing a lot of copying and pasting. Because the XML files, they will always follow the same sort of template, and then you're playing with the values within that. There's a few exceptions to that, but especially for the more basic stuff like this, it's a lot easier to just take the basis and modify it to what you want, rather than trying to type it yourself. That takes a lot more time. You'll probably end up forgetting something, etc. But what we're going to do for this is, first, I don't think there's any attached models for this. Yeah, so like most Empire War hardpoints will have the break-offs. Since we're taking this from the Star Destroyer, we don't want part of the Star Destroyer falling off, but because it's the hangar, I don't think there's an actual break-off for it. So type, this identifies what it is, hardpoint fighter bay, and then the tooltip text, this will be what you see in game when you hover over it. So text fighter bay hardpoint. You can actually change this to whatever you want. You can make this say, you can make this claim it's a laser cannon that's actually a hangar. You can do some different stuff like that. But because this is for the assault frigate, we're going to check the health. The other hardpoints have about 350, but we're going to leave this at about 200. And then we're going to go back and just for consistency, anywhere that it'll say the actual health, we're going to add 200 to it. Alright, so that should handle that. And so the next thing we need to worry about are the attachment bones and collision mesh. Attachment bone is which part of the model it will go onto. We're going to talk a bit more about that when we cover more hardpoint stuff in the next one, but for now we're just going to call it root. It's always safe to do that, to call it root, because when you're just adding something like a single hangar to things, because every model in the game will have a root point. So it's automatically generated essentially when the model is exported. So even if you don't know what bones a model has, every model will have a root point, and typically it's not already used for something. And then for the collision mesh, this essentially allows the game to tell that this hard point is different from this hard point. So we're just going to name that to, at this point it doesn't necessarily need to refer to something real. You can call it the same as your attachment bone if you want. So that's not a thing. We can name that root as well. But that should do it. That is how you add a hangar to a ship that doesn't already have it. So next time we will be covering how to make an actual unit yourself, or how to modify a unit into something different. So adding different types of hardpoints and all that sort of thing. Playing with prices, playing with build locations. So that should be coming next Monday. I'm going to try to do this a bit more often than I have been. But if there's any specific topics you want covered, I know there was one request I got for some dummy research sort of ideas. Dummy being like a fake object, not calling anyone stupid. I think I'm going to cover that after we cover the basics of doing actual units. So that'll be coming up at some point. But that should do it for now. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day.